now. There we go. Okay, so thanks so much for joining us for our Blue Monkey Network event today. We're really pleased to have with us Karolina Raczynski, who is an artist, a London-based artist, who is currently working with the learning team at Towner, and Willow Mitchell, who's the learning curator at Towner. And just before I give a brief introduction to them, I'll just flag that our next event will be on Thursday, the 20th of May, and that will be Joe Hill from Towner. It'll be more of a practical session talking about how to approach galleries and sort of cultural institutions when trying to get your work shown and exhibited. So it's more of a sort of professional development talk. And then after that will be on the 17th of June, and it's an event with Vault that we're sort of co-partnering on that, and it will be an artist talk with Olivia Sterling, who is an artist that will be having the next exhibition at Vault, which opens I think in May, when all the galleries get to open up again. So watch out for emails, stuff on social media that will tell you a bit more about that, but just to sort of flag it with you. So Karolina, who's here with us tonight from London, will be introducing two recent multimedia works, both of which have been developed and realised over lockdown. Alongside, she'll reflect on the impact, the challenges and opportunities of this period on her practice as a socially engaged artist filmmaker. And the first of these works, Dig Deep, forms part of Towner Eastbourne's engagement programme in connection to the England's Creative Coast Waterfront series. And Willow will give like a brief introduction to that first. So Karolina is a London-based artist filmmaker whose practice draws on the concepts of community, public space and technology. She's also a founder member of Collective Is, sorry if I've not said that right, an all-female London-based experimental filmmakers collective. And Willow, who will be joining us, she joined the Towner team in December 2019, having worked in learning teams and freelance associate artist roles for various organisations, including Milton Keynes Gallery, MK Gallery, Kettle's Yard and Turner Contemporary. So thank you both to our speakers for joining us tonight. What we'll do is we'll hand over and then there'll be a chance for Q&A at the end. So if I could ask everyone to mute themselves if possible, and then we can all have a chat and a discussion at the end. So thanks both. I'll hand over now.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Steph. I'm just going to share my screen if that's okay. So you've got, although it's probably going to be quite small, isn't it? But do that. So you've got some images while I'm talking. Sorry, let's get the nice big one for you. There we go. Is that okay? Can everyone hear and see? Lovely job. Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much, Steph. It's really lovely to be joining you all this evening, and we're really genuinely excited to be sharing this project with you, and alongside giving Karolina the opportunity to present her commission and wider practice. As Steph mentioned, I joined the team just a few months before lockdown, so unfortunately that means there's very few faces on the screen that I recognise from corridor collisions at Towner, but hopefully in the coming months I'll be meeting some of you in person, which will be really exciting as well. So before I hand over to Karolina, I'm just going to briefly contextualise the wider project that her recent Towner Eastbourne commission has evolved from. So Steph's just mentioned this, but her new audio work, Dig Deep, forms part of a quite unique engagement programme in connection to England's Creative Coast's Waterfront series. So a little bit more context to this project. It's a large-scale project and it's reasonably ambitious as well. It's delivered across 7 partner organisations, Towner Eastbourne being one of them, and it seeks to celebrate and connect the distinct creative coastlines across Essex, Kent and East Sussex, drawing on the uniqueness of each coastal location. So this brings 7 new site-specific contemporary artworks to coastal towns around those regions, all outdoors, I should say as well. And each one has been made by a really exciting contemporary international artist, made in response to the unique coastlines and the identity of the towns that they're sited in. So I'll just quickly mention the partners so you know who you might want to visit over summer if you feel like travelling. So Turner Contemporary, Delaware Pavilion, Hastings Contemporary, Creative Folkestone, cement fields and metal alongside Towner Eastbourne. In terms of what Eastbourne's got to offer, we have had a public, or in the process of having a public artwork developed for Eastbourne by artist Mariana Castillo Deball, and she's a Mexican artist currently based in Berlin with a really, really interesting practice. I've heard it described as kaleidoscopic, which I think is quite fitting. She sort of works across science, art, history, and archaeology, and is really preoccupied considering the role of objects and the role they play in terms of our identity and history. So her commission for Eastbourne has been inspired by the Frankish woman, who's an unknown female whose ancient remains were discovered at the Anglo-Saxon cemetery on St Anne's Hill in Eastbourne. So I'm not sure if any of you live near there or familiar with that area. In 1997, there was an archaeological dig that excavated some really interesting remains, including the Frankish woman, alongside some fascinating grave finds. So Karolina's going to talk to you a little bit more about these, so I won't give too much away, but I'll just mention there was a glass claw beaker, a brooch, a hairpin, really, really fascinating and quite beautiful, intricate objects. So yeah, Mariana Castillo Deball created our public artwork inspired by these finds, and the artwork itself is going to play out across Eastbourne. So it's going to cover the town centre, Towners building, and actually out into the South Downs as well. And it's sort of constructed in 3 parts. Unfortunately, I haven't got any images yet. It's sort of very much a work in progress, but I can share with you some details of what's coming to get us all inspired. And this has been the basis. So the sort of inspiration behind Mariana's work has also inspired Karolina's. So I'm just sort of setting the tone for her to launch off. So along the streets of Eastbourne, we're going to be able to discover a chalk stencil rope drawing that traces quite an unexpected route through town, and has certainly taken me to some areas that I wasn't familiar with. And that's actually going to be the outline of a woman's profile, which becomes quite a symbolic feature of this project. I think Karolina might touch on that as well. Along at intervals along this trail, there's going to be some sculptural objects embedded in the fabric of the street, and each one relates to some of the objects that were found alongside the Frankish woman. And finally, the third element, which I personally think is the most exciting, is actually taking place in the South Downs itself, and is going to be an inscribed chalk drawing, so like a contemporary geoglyph of one of the objects, obviously scaled up slightly. So that's really, really exciting. And I will actually just I've got a few pictures from Eastbourne to show you some of the areas that these works will be taking place in. So this is Whitbread Hollow, where the hairpin will be. Just to mention, the artwork's called Walking Through the Town. I followed a pattern on the pavement that became the magnified silhouette of a woman's profile. And it's running from the 29th of May to the 12th of November. So alongside, in connection to this artwork, in celebration of England's Creative Coast as a wider project, and as part of our accompanying engagement programme, we've commissioned Karolina Raczynski, a socially engaged audio artist, along with other mediums, which Josh will mention, to create a new audio work which unearths these objects, so the grave finds, metaphorically, because they've already been dug up. And in doing so, she's going to be exploring some of the associated themes that have inspired Mariana's work, and revealing some of the unique history and heritage of Eastbourne through the voices and experiences of local people, which is the really, really exciting part. So I'm about to hand over to Karolina. You've had more than enough of me, but just finally to say, hopefully you'll be inspired to experience her work fully on its completion, and you'll be able to access that either through England Creative Coast's Geo Tour, which is a GPS enabled treasure hunt with digital treasure at certain locations around Eastbourne, the treasure being Karolina's work, or alternatively, you're also going to be able to access it directly on our website alongside. So either or, it's entirely up to you, but hopefully you will be inspired to hear the piece in full on completion. So I will stop sharing the screen, and then I will hand over to Karolina to pick up and continue. Is that okay, Karolina?
Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks. And thank you so much for inviting me today. It's been so great working on this project with Towner, and just to have the chance to meet and speak with the various members of the Eastbourne community, and also have the chance to actually learn more about the field of archaeology and the processes it involves. Especially now during this whole lockdown period, I feel very lucky to be able to meet new people like every week and learn new things. And I can just add a bit more to my background. I am an artist filmmaker, and more recently I'm looking at ways to expand into socially focused and collaborative forms of documentary work, influenced by the activities of the London Filmmakers Cooperative, which existed between 1966 and 1999, and inspired by its collaborative and supportive form of production. I'm also part of an all-female experimental filmmakers collective called Collectiviz, where we program and produce film and video screening events. So as Willow mentioned, I'll be presenting 2 works. So Dig Deep is very much a work in progress, but I do have one extract that is ready to show to you. And the second project is called Breathing Space, which is an experimental documentary made in collaboration with anthropologist Caroline Wilson, that directly addresses the COVID-19 crisis and how Victoria Park as a public space responded to it. So now I'm just going to share my screen and share with you the first slide. I'm going to be showing audio clips and bits of video, so hopefully just wave if there are any problems. That's the first. I'm just going to make it. Okay, cool. Yeah, so this is a picture of my desk, and it also shows the setup that I use to record the interviews for Dig Deep. So basically, I've just finished recording and conducting these interviews with various members of the local Eastbourne community, and most of this was carried out on Zoom or telephone. And hopefully this weekend I can actually get to Eastbourne to begin to collect some field recordings on site. So it was really nice to see those pictures, Willow. And I'm also using a contact mic to create more focused and intimate sounds, which you'll hopefully be able to hear in the extract that I will show you in a bit. It's obviously been quite a difficult time, but it's been interesting to see how my practice has evolved through working under the limitations and challenges of the pandemic, but also extremely moving and inspiring to observe the interactions and generosities of people through the conversations I have been part of. So you'll also see this in the next project that I will show you. Like I had to work in a similar way, but basically these limitations have just become how I work now. So my approach with Dig Deep was to respond to the work of artist Mariana Castillo Deball by also focusing on the burial sites at St. Anne's Road, and specifically explore the identity of an unknown female grave and the objects that were buried with her. So I've actually got an image taken from a report that was written up after the excavation on St. Anne's Hill. So you can actually see a diagram of the grave and the objects that were buried around her, which Will already mentioned, but on the right you can see the brooches, the hairpin, and this glass claw beaker, which I think at the time would have been extremely valuable. And I'm always amazed that it survived, because if it's made out of glass, you'd think it would be quite fragile, but it's just amazing that it's so intact. And it was really nice to hear the archaeologists be so excited about this in the way they spoke about it. So I began by firstly interviewing participants from archaeological backgrounds. So I spoke with Joe Seaman and Kelly Van Dorn from Heritage Eastbourne, Helen and John Warren from the Eastbourne Natural History and Archaeological Society, and Trista Clifford, who is a finds officer and directly analysed some of these objects that were found on the site. And she works at Archaeology Southeast UCL. So I'm now going to show you an audio extract of what I've edited so far. And these are some responses from Joe Seaman and Helen and John Warren on their experiences of working at a dig and the processes and techniques used in excavation. So I'm just going to go to the next slide. and I'm going to press play, which I hope you can hear everything.
It's very gentle, stage by stage. So you start at the top layer and you just gradually go down. So if you know, I mean, you might be a bit rougher at the top, but once you get near to where you'll find you're working with a trowel and you're just taking it a bit at a time.
Archaeology is all about layers. So you go down in spits, so you can really understand the process of the filling up of something. Because a lot of these graves are quite well preserved, you could see them. So you can work from the known to the unknown. You're not sure what's going in the middle, so it's best to work from one side where you know that there's an edge, and then you can work across. And then when you start to see things like bones sticking out or objects, then you know that you've got to go even slower.
And then you can use smaller and smaller scrapers to get round things.
And brushes when you get to very delicate
A soft brush.
And the most important thing, though, is recording. As you're excavating, I mean, what I tend to do, whenever I'm excavating, is have a notepad with me, and I'll just write notes, loads of notes, not only sort of technical notes, but things like how the soil feels to me, what my hunches are, all these things, which you might not ever go back to again, but really important to understand your thinking when you're doing something, because that can help interpretation afterwards.
Yeah, so I felt like this was a good place to start, and also to show you, as I feel like in a way it really reflects how I am approaching the project by moving through layers and being quite delicate, as we are working around the uncertain identity of someone from the past. And from there, we contacted other individuals from Eastbourne to collect further perspectives and reflections on identity, belonging, and connections to Eastbourne. So I had some really amazing conversations with artist Christine Binney, and she described this amazing memory of her first dance at a school disco, which apparently on St. Anne's Hill, I think there used to be an art school, but before that there was a sixth form college. So it was really nice to hear her speak about this memory, but also with this realization now that it was actually all on top of an Anglo-Saxon burial site. And then I spoke with Camilla Franco from the bookshop, where we spoke more generally about storytelling, and Claire Piper from Amazing Futures, who described a fantastic project where local youth groups were actually involved in post-excavation tasks. And finally, Laura Murphy from the Women's Project in Eastbourne, who I felt we shared many parallels in searching for the voice of historical female figures. So at the moment, I'm just getting through all this. I've got quite a lot of material now, so I'm just kind of getting through it all. And I really look forward to working out how to formulate a collective voice and response through these different perspectives and combine this with my own soundscape recordings. So that's all I have at the moment to show you for Dig Deep. So I will now move on to the other project, called Breathing Space. So this was a collaboration with anthropologist Caroline Wilson, whose research is based on Victoria Park in East London. She also worked there as a park warden, so she was actually very much part of the team there. We got into contact through a matchmaking event at UCL, where they encouraged artists and academics to work together on a proposal for a creative and community-based project. It was actually during the first lockdown, when I found out about the controversial closure of the park, that I reached out to Caroline, proposing to collaborate on this together. So we met up in the park just as the rules were beginning to be relaxed. And we began organizing interviews with workers, visitors, and local residents. And so material was gathered to address issues arising from COVID-19 and the park's response to it as a public space. In this project, it was a little bit different, so because we could actually meet up outside face to face, just as long as we were like 2 meters apart. So I got a cable that was 2 meters long and attached this to the microphone to ensure that we were all safe. And also, as well as this, as well as recording the interviews, I also got myself a microscope with a little USB camera and collected things from the park that I could look at, such as leaves, feathers, and pond water. In this period of social and physical distancing, I felt that I could use a microscope to capture more intimate and close-up perspectives of the park. So I'm now going to just show you the next extract.
I am concerned that I could possibly catch the virus, but I'm also wanting to breathe, like not in getting to fear. And I think, you know, this is the whole meme that's going around the world at the moment. It's like, I can't breathe, you know, with the police, violence, and there's lots of levels people can't breathe for whatever reason, you know, what's ever happening in their life. And I think whether it's actual breath, when people come to the park, it's a space to breathe. Whether that's actually physically, emotionally, it's like having space to nourish the body in some way, bring breath into the body. Yeah.
No, I couldn't tell you what leaf it is, but I think what I'm looking at there is a very close up of a leaf surface, and they are the stomatas that are that allow gaseous exchange in the leaf. So they're like the little mouths. They let oxygen out and carbon dioxide in where they're doing that. So they need carbon dioxide as part of their chemical reaction. Transpiration's happening in there, gaseous exchange. You know, they are the mouth that, you know, that is kind of crude lungs and heart of the leaf, I guess, you know, stomach and metabolism, all helping fuel the metabolism of the plant.
Please enjoy the park responsibly. Stay 2 meters away from others at all times and limit your use of benches to 1 person or 1 household. Keep dogs on a lead. Do not gather or play sports games. Failure to do so could result in a fine or the park being closed.
Yeah, so that last recording was actually of the tannoy system in the park. And I just remember being in the park and hearing that announcement and just thinking how dystopian it was and how, like, yeah, it was such a weird experience. Yeah, I also have some images of some other microscopic footage that I got. So this is from some pond water, some plant matter that I found, and some of the creatures that I found as well. Like, it's amazing to see how much life is in the tiniest drop of pond water. And these I also incorporated into the film. And also Caroline, she did have a collection of feathers. So I did look at some of those as well. And this next clip is her speaking about this parakeet feather.
Yeah. This is better. don't know what's going on there, but like like that colour down the middle, that's incredible. What's making that? Yeah, so anyway, I talk about this feather. This is, it's a parakeet feather. And I remember the first time I found a parakeet feather was probably while I was doing the parks research. And I remember just feeling so lucky. Like, it was amazing. The idea of finding a green feather, it's just so cool, so exotic, you know. And then, like,
there's quite a lot in the park as well.
There's loads in the park. There's so many, and yeah, but still, it's difficult to spot the feathers actually, because, you know, obviously they're green and the grass is green. But then you especially when you're used to looking at the ground a lot, when you're litter picking and stuff, you become very attuned to that different kind of green. And yeah, it's just incredible. So just as the sun is going down, it's getting a bit dark, or there's like really bright light from the sun's on the horizon. It's kind of orangey, pinky kind of light, and they'll just be dashing around in little groups, quite low down, like from tree to tree, making a hell of a racket. And it's really striking because it's starting to get a bit dark, and when you catch, it depends on where they fly, but if they fly in such a way that you can see the colour, there's this like vivid green against a kind of against a kind of gloomy background. And they go really low, so you can hear, they go at kind of head height for a person, and they'll come quite close to you sometimes. You can hear the sound of their wings as they fly past you. It's amazing. And yeah, you know, a lot of people I was working with in the park, they were saying that they were doing it in celebration that the people had gone because, you know, we'd kick everyone out at 8 and then we'd walk through the park and the sun was setting and they'd be doing all that. But, you know, they do it anyway, but I guess it is true that they do, that there's fewer people around when they do it. So it feels like some kind of celebration. It feels I don't know how to interpret their noises, but they sound, they're very, I don't know, they're very emotional about something.
Yeah. And then, so as well as this microscopic footage, I also invited participants to contribute their own visual material that they collected over the lockdown. And one of the park wardens, he had 60 pictures that he took of the empty park when they actually locked it. And these images were just so striking, especially as at the time there was so much going on in the news. There were of overcrowded parks. That was just such a huge contrast to see this. And we also got so many photos of nature and wildlife in the park, which obviously played a huge role in helping people in this time. So I'm just going to show you these photos of the empty park.
I mean, a photograph can capture an awful lot. Insofar as the atmosphere, that was more difficult. But yeah, I took a lot of photographs. I took about 60 photographs of the park lockdown. The atmosphere of an empty park, I mean, a park that's normally used to being busy and lots of people, coupled with the fact of this great unknown outside the gates, which is COVID, it was very eerie. It was a feeling of, I mean, not just the park being empty, that's unusual in itself, but the atmosphere that came with it, it was just very quiet. The whole atmosphere, not just in the park, outside, everybody was very subdued, it was a nervous atmosphere. There was an air of anticipation that something very big was going to come along very soon.
If you recall, our weather then was really nice throughout the lockdown. So the park was needed by a lot of people. And when I looked in, everything was just starting to bloom and blossom. And to see it empty, I mean, it went, again, that's at extremes. It went from being too crowded to barren in a day. And that it just looked like a place that people could enjoy at a time of anxiety, and they couldn't.
On a selfish level, it was wonderful. The park was empty. People equal trouble. So obviously, if there's no people, then I'm going to have a stress-free day, all right? Generally, because people cause the problems in the park. If there are problems to add, it's going to be a human being that does it. So the fact that they weren't in here at that time, it was lovely. Seeing the the birds being able to walk around the space and just take advantage of the space because they normally can't. Watching the goose on the lake, West Lake, being able to graze, which is what they want to do. They don't want to stay in the water 24/7, but because humans are in the park all day, they do not feel comfortable to come out and graze, and that's how they get half of their food.
Yeah, it's quite strange to see those images now, because I think they closed the park last year on the 25th of March for 2 weeks. So it's almost this time last year that this happened. And in a way, we're still living through it now. So it's even more disorientating, which is something that I found quite confusing whilst I was editing, because we collected the material over the summer, and then I began to edit in like just after the summer, which is when all the rules started to change again. So I felt like it was quite confusing to go through all the different tenses, because people were speaking in the past tense, but being in the present tense, like realizing that we're going through the whole thing again, it was actually quite a confusing time. And then I think I'll just show you one more clip, which I think will be quite a nice way to end it. It's of one of the park gardeners describing how important it is to find time to talk to people. I'll just play that now.
And again, I've got this theory that park rangers or park keepers or park gardeners are one of the last sort of public sector employees who are out, about, visible, and have time to talk to you if you want to talk. Postmen used to have time, they just don't anymore. Policemen aren't on the beat. Your doctor really has that much time, and he has no sort of social chat. And yeah, I have people that I sometimes think probably they're one of the few, but if I have a chat with them, that's probably the only decent chat they're going to have that day.
Your attention, please. Victoria Park is now closed. Please leave via the nearest exit or as directed by a member of staff. Thank you for your cooperation.
Yeah, I thought like it was quite interesting for him that we could end on this point. So I feel like it kind of resonates with both the projects that I showed today. I mean, perhaps in different ways, but essentially they're both about creating space for conversations, as this has been quite an important part of how people are dealing through this time, like how important conversations and human contact is in helping each other get through this time and as a collective. But I suppose like breathing space was more about responding and surviving in a specific moment, so being in the present. But dig deep is more about thinking of the past and creating space to reflect. I just found myself with the dig deep interviews, I found it really refreshing just to think about the past, and that was like a noticeable difference that I had in comparison to the breathing space project. But also just being constructive about that and thinking of ways how to move forwards, and yeah, and that's it. Yeah. Should I stop sharing my screen? I'll stop sharing my screen.
I was just going to say that. Thank you. Thank you, Karolina and Willow, for presenting your work and talking about the projects. We've got quite a bit of time for questions or discussion. There's like loads in there. I don't know if anyone wants to sort of has any thoughts or ideas they want to sort of ask about. Stick your hand up or use the wave sign. I'll try and get to, if I can find my mouse. There we go. Yeah, I don't know if there's anyone out there that wants to unmute themselves. Yeah, Willow has a question. Yeah, so go, if you want to unmute yourself, you feel free to.
Thank you. Yeah, I can kick us off with some questions. It's actually a question I haven't had a chance to ask Karolina, but I've been quite curious in terms of how it's thinking of Dig Deep, how it's been generating new work that is so localized and specific to an area when the current circumstances haven't enabled you to be physically present, and how that's I guess mediated the process, or the challenges and all the opportunities that have come from that. I'd be really interested to hear about.
Yeah, at first I think I was quite daunted, because I was really expecting that I'd be able to actually go physically to Eastbourne, but then I kind of realized, like, as I was doing the interviews, actually how with Zoom, like this kind of situation, in a way it just felt quite comfortable, and actually maybe it made people more relaxed to be able to speak, because I noticed when with the Victoria Park project, when we could actually meet people face to face, it was a lot more hard work to try and reassure people and that to do these interviews. But with the Zoom or telephone call, it just feels less intrusive, maybe. And I thought maybe it does create a more relaxed atmosphere for these kind of interviews to take place. I don't know, but this is something that I felt was quite a positive thing, actually. At first I wasn't so I was a bit worried about it, but then I realized actually it was quite positive.
Yeah, that's really cool. Just to add that I had similar, like, not reservations, but I was concerned that how we were going to approach sort of reinterpreting the brief, if you like, in circumstances that were very much out of our control. But then thinking of this Frankish woman and the migratory paths she definitely took, and the notions of movement and like passing in and out of place and like connection to place, I actually thought it was quite fascinating that you were removed from the place yourself, and I thought that just added quite an interesting dimension to those interviews and those conversations, especially with people like shedding light on I mean, literally my understanding is that you've been excavating stories, and I also really like the notion that it's archaeology upon archaeology. But I just think it's really, really exciting, and the fact that you've been removed, although it's exciting, you can now join us in Eastbourne for some field recordings. I think I found that quite a fascinating element of the project.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
I put that in, like, questions about place were on my thoughts as well, just about how the Victoria Park project seems so rooted in that very specific environment of the park and the confines of the park. And did you say you live quite close to there as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's very clear. It's like
so you obviously were going there before the project, and during and after, so it's kind of become I suppose it's, for me, I was quite interested in the kind of site-specific nature of kind of being there, and having those recordings and talking to the people and going with a microscopic camera, whereas the Eastbourne project, although it's still about like a place, you've kind of had that element of removal, and it was a similar sort of thought around your experiences with that. And I guess having had all those stories and having the conversations digitally, I think you're right, people are a lot more relaxed because they're probably mostly in their home environment. But I wonder how you'll feel kind of coming to Eastbourne, whether your experience might be different, being on site in situ. I don't know if you've had any thoughts about
I really hope, I mean, this weekend I'm actually hoping to get to Eastbourne. I mean, we did meet up last year for a walk around the area. I mean, another way of getting around it as well was by getting a contact mic, maybe in a similar way that I always hoped, like with the microscope, to get more kind of close up contact with what I was dealing with. I kind of hope maybe the contact mic will also help create these kind of more intimate sounds. But I mean, it kind of is what it is with this whole situation, but I'm just trying to work out how to make the best out of it. And I mean, I would have loved to spend more time in Eastbourne and see by the sea and stuff. But I think it still feels very rich to me. Like the material that I have is the conversations that we have. It's really special. Yeah.
Great. As anyone? Oh, Judith, we've got a hand down there. Hello.
Hi. Yeah, I might have missed it actually earlier. So sorry if this has already been said. But I was just wondering how Karolina's work is going to actually be presented as part of the project and in relation to the other work that's going to be out in the environment.
Yeah, absolutely. I did touch on it, but I can certainly go into a little bit more detail. So this is the thing. So Karolina's commission is going to be accessible in sort of two formats. Oh no, the format's the same, but like two ways of accessing it. It was actually commissioned to form part of a geocache tour, which is something that's new to us at Towner. Is something we're sort of embracing and learning as we go along, and that's actually part of the England Creative Coast project, like the broader project. So all the partners, all the delivery partners that I mentioned across Essex, Kent and East Sussex will be developing geocaches that are going to connect together on a sort of coastal tour. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with geocaching or are already involved in it, but it's basically, as I mentioned really briefly, it's like a GPS enabled, so sort of like a digital treasure hunt. So generally the easiest way to access it is via an app, but there are other ways, and you follow a GPS signal to specific locations, and then you're able to find a physical object, and at that location of that object access a sort of a digital treasure, if you like, which is going to be Karolina's work. So I don't think Karolina actually mentioned, but it's one work but in three sections, sort of 3 segments. So each of those segments will be able to be accessed in a location in Eastbourne, sort of heard, in situ, but alternatively also the work's going to be available on the website as well. So there's no obligation to take part in the tour, but it is it's a new way of working, and it's something that we're exploring collectively with the other partners. So it's really nice that we've been able to take that opportunity to commission. There's actually another artist has been involved creating the physical objects. Amy Lang has been working to create the physical cache objects. So it's been really nice to have the opportunity to create 2 kind of engaged practice commissions as a result of this new strand of working that's very much piloting that kind of engagement and what it could mean for Eastbourne.
And so is all of the work actually going to be off-site then, or is any of it going to be represented in the gallery?
There's going to be, I mentioned the embedded objects that are going to be around town on the walking tour. One of those is going to be sited at Towner. And I should also mention that Mariana Castillo Deball has been invited to curate a collection show alongside over the period of her off-site work being accessible, and of course Karolina's alongside as well. So yeah, there'll be, the Towner will sort of serve as a hub for the project, and then there'll be opportunities for those that would like to take them to experience the off-site artworks. All of them, one of them, whatever takes your fancy.
Thank you.
No problem.
Great. Oh, Roger, if you want to,
Thanks. I was just wondering, looking at the breathing space excerpts that you showed, whether anything that you did made you think there's a nucleus there for another project, whether you're even tempted to go away from what you started from and go down another route. Because I was just listening to 1 or 2 things. I thought, well, you could take that and make it a separate task. Did that ever occur to you?
I think maybe I just haven't had enough time to kind of take a step back from it and reflect. But I have so much material from that time that I feel like it's not enough just to present it within that format. And also I also feel like the importance of archiving some of these interviews just as an oral history project. So that was something that we were speaking about, just to to create an archive of just all the interviews. But I'm trying to think. I mean, it's a really interesting thought. I haven't really thought of anything yet, but maybe it's because I jumped from that into this dig deep project. So
the thing which particularly struck me was the tannoy. I thought there could be a full story around that sort of aspect.
Yeah. Actually, I did think it would have been amazing to maybe create like an outdoor kind of sound installation using the actual tannoy system. But it's just been so difficult because we still haven't even been able to show it as a physical event yet in the park, which was something that we're hoping to do. Like we've just been waiting for the rules and all the lockdown stuff to kind of like change so that we are actually able to create like physical installations or also use that tannoy system. But actually when I was there, I think the tannoy system did break down, so I'm not sure if that's a possibility anymore. But we were, it actually stopped working, so yeah, but hopefully maybe they'll fix it and then that could still be an option. But yeah, it's a really interesting question. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. So Esther had a question if you want to ask away.
I had a similar question, which leads on from that, which was about, so you've just touched on in the Breathing Space project, you were using the term oral history, and I was really aware that with the Dig Deep project, you're using a lot of material that is obviously from a long time ago, but is already documented and formalized and categorized in specific ways. And I was wondering about how you feel the balance sits with you between the responsibility of being factual or presenting some form of what you think of as a truth, and how you balance that with your personal experiences of those conversations and like what leads you as an artist, what your decision-making process as an artist is. And yeah, how does that work and what does it feel like?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is something I always like, this responsibility. I definitely feel it, especially when I conduct these interviews, and sometimes it's hours and hours of material. So I do try to keep what I do extract from it. I do try to keep it as I don't like to meddle too much with it. I kind of do like to keep it as it is. Yeah, I think in general, I think my work isn't, I mean, I suppose it is about storytelling, but I do use the words of the people. I don't like to make brand new stories from it. I kind of like to stick to the actual stuff that people say, and then work out ways to kind of complement that, but not twist it in any way or change it, just to find ways to kind of make it work together. Yeah, I mean, it's something I do think about a lot. Also, this about storytelling in general, like how, which I did actually ask the archaeologists as well, like how much does storytelling play in their kind of with what they do, and it was really interesting to hear them describe. It's like you got to be really careful and not to jump to conclusions. But at the same time, storytelling is quite important because it brings the objects to life, and also it makes people interested, so they do want to learn more. So I do feel like I can really resonate with that as well. It was actually quite interesting to compare like archaeologists and artists, like how they work, and I felt like I could really resonate with what they were saying. Yeah.
Great, thanks. There's loads in that I'd love to talk about, but I'm going to hand over to Lil-Anne because she'd like to ask a question, so go for it.
Okay, I've been living away from England and Eastbourne for years, but have I understood rightly that my old art school was like the burial ground for this
It was on top of the burial ground.
How did you find? How was this found?
This was actually quite a few people told me about this, like the archaeologists and Christine Binney, and apparently, actually one of the John Warren, I think he used to work at the art school as a technician, and he described some moments where apparently when they were building the building, they actually found bits of bone and bits of metal and stuff, and
it was quite freaky up there. I mean, it was really like this old haunted house. It was fantastic. I mean, and I went back some years ago when I was in Eastbourne trying to look for the place, and I think it's been pulled down and they built flats, or I don't know.
Yeah, it was like a redevelopment. So that's when they got the archaeologists to kind of before they built those new buildings.
Yeah, because I mean, it hasn't been because somebody's gone round and, you know, sort of had a hunch that it might have been there. Okay, this is so interesting. What did the woman die of? Do you know?
That's the thing. I think her skeleton is still being analysed. So it's not 100% certain how she died.
Because this is a bit macabre, because I mean, if it's murder,
I don't think it was murder though, because I think her actual skeleton. I don't know actually. I don't know how you.
Okay, but I've got a parallel. It's a really nasty, creepy. You know why we keep all the people living in London? It's because we have all these horrible murders that happen out in these nice countries, you know, like Midsummer Murders.
Oh yeah.
It keeps you all in the big cities, but sometimes it's actually true. And when I was at St Anne's Road in the Eastbourne College of Art and Design, one of my friends became a missing person.
Oh.
For years and years and years and years. And she was at the art school, and she was one of the ones that they found her body 20 years later in the downs and the bushes.
Okay.
You know, I'm just thinking, you know, Eastbourne is so tied to suicides, to there's some really weird stuff that's happened there. So, you know, and I thought, you know, the tying to the actual place as well. I mean, it didn't happen there, but she lived down the road in Upperton Gardens.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's interesting.
Is there anyone else that has recollections of the art school or the dig that took place like back in the 90s? Anyone remember anything at the time when that came out that they'd like to share that might be of interest? No, I don't know.
I mean, it's quite interesting that there used to be an art school on top of this site. That was quite an interesting thing that I found out when I was making these interviews.
Oh, it was so cool. I mean, it was the best place ever.
Yeah.
And this is at the early punk period.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's something that I know in Jen and Christine's show at Towner. I don't know if you got to if you went to see it, Karolina, or got the opportunity to, but yeah, there was a lot of references to their time, or, you know, at the art college, and you know, the sort of scouring the, you know, secondhand shops and stuff like that down here. I think also about, you know, the sort of the idea of the burial site as well, and the building on top of the burial site is quite like a kind of trope, isn't it, within sort of like horror and, you know, sort of pop culture, that sort of thing. Just before we end, just maybe turn the conversation away from, you know, that side of things, macabre. Does anyone have any further questions or things they want to sort of ask or comment on about what they've heard? And Willow, if you want to.
I would happily, if there's no one else, but I have already asked one. So, and I've got further opportunities to ask.
Anyone else?
Is there anyone else? Yeah, it might be quite a nice one to close on, actually.
Yeah.
It's just, I jotted down when you were speaking, Karolina, that you actually, I've just really liked it, so I wrote it down quickly, that these limitations have become the way you work now. And I guess my question is, what has this period of work, generating work over this, you know, unknown, challenging, upsetting period, has it has it left you sort of aspiration for future working? Do you feel genuinely that it's going to steer the direction of your practice in, you know, coming months or years? And I think, I also was just wondering, with that in mind. Well, no, let's stick to that. Let's stick to that because we don't have long. Let's go with that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like these two, like Dig Deep and Breathing Space, they're probably like the biggest projects that I've worked on, because in the past, maybe my projects were a lot more, they weren't as complex, and maybe they didn't involve as many people. So I definitely want to continue working with people. That's something that I would definitely kind of, and it will be interesting to see how I do climb out of this period. Once everything goes back to normal, but to be honest, I feel like another thing that's quite funny is that because I did a lot of performance work, so I have used Skype and internet before, so maybe that's why I felt so at ease during this whole lockdown period, because it's stuff it is something that I used to use quite a lot, and also the precarity of like these kind of video calls, and I think I'm actually quite used to it. So maybe
that kind of was the extension to my question that I cut short, which now I might jump in with, is that obviously you're a multimedia artist, and I was going to say that you've worked with digital mediums, and now obviously the digital was part of our existences, but in these recent months and the year really, it's taken a massive role and toll on us, I'd say, as well. So yeah, I guess that was the sort of end of the question, was how is it generating work in those mediums, and having a history of generating work in these mediums, has it shifted, or have you been given new perspectives, or have you faced additional challenges or reservations, I suppose, because we're now confronted with this, you know, every day in, day out?
I mean, I think I am becoming a bit tired. I am becoming quite tired, and I do look forward just to kind of having more face-to-face meetings. When I think, when before I think I was like, maybe I even took it a bit for granted, all this kind of Skype calling, and but yeah, I suppose I don't know, I'm just gonna have to go with the flow and see what happens next. I think that's how in general how I work. I just respond to things, like situations that I'm in, so I can't really predict where that's going to go next, but I think maybe that is part of the way I work. It's like working out a puzzle, and yeah. But first of all, I need to finish. I'll finish this Dig Deep, and I really look forward to it.
That'd be great if you could finish it.
And then and just actually, it'll be so nice to be in Eastbourne and like get these field recordings, and that I think that will help ground me actually away from this kind of video calling, and
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us at our Blue Monkey event, Karolina and Willow, and for your insights and sharing your work. And I hope that everything goes well with the rest of the project, and look forward to seeing it, or hearing it I should say, and seeing other bits of the wider ECC project from the 29th of May onwards. So hopefully we can all get out and about again, and experience that in the next couple of months. So so thank you to you guys for joining us, and thanks to everyone for coming. Do keep an eye out on the social media and everything else, emails, etc., for the forthcoming events, and just generally keep in touch, follow us on the usual channels, and we will see you all soon. So I will say goodbye, and have a lovely evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.